Is Jon Wilcoxson with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. Woo! He's going to talk about the Pavement Preservation Expert Task Group.
I was going to talk about the FHWA Pavement Preservation Expert Task Group. Richard Turner from Charleston County, who is one of our SEPPP members, he's not here this week, he put these slides together. He's also on the Expert Task Group. So I stole most of his slides. Him being from Charleston County, South Carolina, I maintained his color scheme of the garnet and black from University of South Carolina, just in an homage to Richard. So the FHWA Pavement Preservation Expert Task Group, I've been on this second version of the task group since 2015. The first version was put together in 1997 or so. I've gotten some conflicting information about exactly when it started. I think Jason's slides may have said 91. But yes, that was Jim Sorensen's group that he put together. If any of you knew Jim Sorensen, he was this quiet little man that would occasionally talk about pavement preservation. Jim was a big guy in a lot of ways, the Pavement Preservation Expert Task Group was his brainchild. After he died, the task group kind of fell apart for several years, so it was reformed in 2015. And one thing I have to say, again, with this group here and having so many people from Kentucky, I have to acknowledge that being on the expert task group is a little embarrassing for me, because the extent of my expertise has been surrounding myself with a lot of people who do the hard work and then riding their coattails. So I'm hopeful that being on this group, that maybe someday there'll be an international pavement preservation expert task group, and they'll say, that Jon Wilcoxson, he can do great things. We're going to put him on that now. We've got membership from all over the country. We tried to be geographically dispersed. We tried to get people from state DOTs, from local agencies, from industry, from federal highways. You see up there we've got New York State listed, but we recently lost one member. Mike Rossi was no longer able to be part of the group. So we are looking for more membership, hopefully from the Northeast, because they're a little underrepresented. I know that there aren't a lot of Northeast states here, but if you happen to think of anyone, that'd be great. If you know of anyone in that area, especially the local agencies. I think we get a lot of value out of involving our local agencies, both at the national level and at the state level. So we are looking for more membership to fill in some of those blanks. When we started out, we decided, what are we going to do? So we came up with a mission statement to advance and improve the state of practice in the area of highway pavement preservation by working collaboratively with federal, state, and local agencies, industry, and academic interests. We've got a vision statement. I didn't put that in here, but it says things about right road, right treatment, right time, things that most of you have heard before. We've got several working groups working on the research roadmap. We're also looking at specific research statements that we want to try to advance. We've got a definitions group, an outreach group. That's the group that I'm on, and I'm going to go into a little more detail about one of the work products of the outreach group, because obviously I think that's the group doing the best job. The pavement preservation, quality assurance, and implementation activities. So one of the first things we did in one of the early meetings, we decided, what are we going to do to try to help promote preservation? And we came up with this concept that's similar to, if you remember, several years ago, I believe it was the National Center that put together the checklist. What was it called? The quick checklist of your pavement health, of your pavement network health, some to that effect. And it was just something that agencies could use to kind of assess the condition of their pavement network. This was kind of the same concept as a way to measure how good is your pavement preservation program. And we settled on, we're going to come up with 10 different characteristics of a world-class pavement preservation program. I've listed the first 5 up here because and they're not in any particular order. We decided we're not going to make this a top 10 where we sometimes refer to it as the top 10, but they're not in any particular order. And there were a couple of things that we may have missed. There were a couple of topics that we left out. I thought about it and realize that hopefully there will be people that will look at this list and they'll have heated arguments about number 6 and why it should have been something else instead of that. I don't know if it has quite taken off that to that point yet, but it was never meant to be a list of items that you have to have to be a world-class pavement preservation program. It was just characteristics that you would commonly find in a world-class preservation program. And if you're just starting out, you're a state or a local agency and you're trying to get your preservation program off the ground, you might look at this list and say, oh, here are some areas where we're doing well, here are some areas where we're falling short, and we gave some guidance on what these things look like. So there was a article that Judith probably wrote 95% of, and the rest of us got all the author credit of finishing it up after she retired. That was in the Pavement Preservation Journal in, I think it was winter of 2017. And it outlined all of the characteristics of a world-class pavement preservation program and went into, obviously, more detail behind each of these items. Subsequent to that article, we have gone back and we're revisiting each of those topics and focusing on one agency that really personifies that characteristic. And so to date, we have gotten 5 of those articles. Well, we've gotten 4 published. The last one, New York DOT, right now is writing and should be out in the summer edition. But you see there, dedicated and sufficient funding. That was Richard Turner's Charleston County. That was the first follow-up article we had. Kentucky Transportation Cabinet had an article on support from all levels of agency. We had a really good article from the city of Moraga, California, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he came and gave a presentation at our working group last winter after this article. It was really good, and another example of why I think that we need to involve local agencies more. Minnesota DOT just finished up their article on well-documented specifications, testing, and approval. That's in the spring edition that was just published. And as I said, incorporating pavement preservation into your asset management plan, New York DOT is working on that now. And so here are the remaining 5 items on the list that we are actively seeking agencies to write articles for. So if there are any of you out there that see something on this list that you think your agency would represent well, please let me know, because we're seeking out agencies for that effort. We hope to do 1 every quarter, so we're doing 4 a year. So by sometime in the summer of 2020, we should be finishing up these. Some of the upcoming efforts of the expert task group, Jason pointed out that Federal Highways is looking towards developing a strategic plan on pavement preservation that we're going to be involved in. Updating the research roadmap, some of you will be seeing a survey coming from her, hopefully in the next few weeks as we work out some of those details. Outreach group has talked about maybe doing some webinars on the characteristics of world-class preservation programs, either doing follow-up discussions with the agencies that were featured, or even involving some other agencies that weren't involved in the initial article. Just to give another venue for talking about those things and allow for some feedback, some questions, answers, opportunities for people to have another way to get that message out. You know, something that came up during Jason's presentation that occurred to me is with the emulsion task force being a group that was developed from the expert task group, and we're talking about the things that they're trying to do with the specifications, it seems like that might be a task that the expert task group should take on, is actually trying to support our what we call that sister group, emulsion group, the task force, trying to support their efforts. So I think that's something when we have our next partnership or our task group meeting we should bring up. Does anybody have any questions?
You mentioned that local agency from California had come in and how they had really shown that educating the stakeholders was something they excelled at. Could you elaborate some on what things that they had done to help educate those people?
He did a presentation on just some of the outreach that they had done, and a lot of the things that we all try to do, where you're showing your network conditions and the funding levels that you've got. I think for a small agency, he was just really, he was on the cutting edge for what you would expect out of a smaller city like that. Now they have some advantages. He said they have. I forget exactly where City of Moraga is, but it was a more affluent area, higher educated area. So, you know, some of the challenges that you might find trying to make those connections, he didn't have to go through. But still, it was really impressive. You ought to read that article. I think it was fall of last year, maybe winter of last year. Again, those are all in the Pavement Preservation Journal. Thank you all very much.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.